Extreme events have always happened, they always will happen, and we're always horrified by them. I think perhaps what actually makes the storm like this one that happened this week such a big deal is YouTube and cell phones. Everybody gets video of it. Everybody gets the picture of, oh my God, look at that storm. It's huge. It's nightmarish. And they're right. But 10 years ago, 15 years ago in the same town, they actually had a tornado that recorded the highest wind speeds anyone had ever recorded, but people didn't all have their cell phones to capture pictures of it.
Yeah, there's some things we understand very well, and we know that as the climate is changing, that we would expect that we're going to get an increased amount of heat waves, less cold waves, more precipitation coming as larger precipitation, more severe precipitation. The physics is pretty basic to explain that a warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor. So when you get the right kind of synoptic conditions to get a storm, you're going to get more precipitation. And we're seeing that all over the world. Looking at the large tornado that occurred in Oklahoma, we certainly can't say that is in any way connected specifically with the fact that the climate is changing, but it could be.
The relationship between climate change and extreme weather is one that climate scientists always really hate to talk about because it's very hard to associate. As I said, extreme events have always happened. There's this big flood that happened somewhere back in early human history that's sort of recorded pretty dramatically. That's Noah and the flood. Big floods have happened. They do happen. They will happen. Big extreme events are always sort of a statistical probability dynamic. We talk about the 100-year flood. That doesn't mean it's on the calendar. That means that based on long-term historical records, in any given year, there is a roughly 1% chance that such an event will happen. What climate change does is it warms up the Earth. So climate change warms the Earth. It puts more energy into the hydrologic system. It puts more energy into the storm system. So it makes storms stormier, it makes droughts droughtier, it just makes everything a bit more intense. And if that means that instead of being a 1% chance in any given year, now it's a 2% chance in any given year, well, that's a really big increase. It doesn't mean you can ascribe any one individually to, oh, well, that was the climate change storm. But the pattern becomes, for me, hard to argue against. That this overall increase in the number of these kinds of events is ultimately related to climate change is very hard to counterbalance. The reality of this tornado was it wasn't the widest that's ever been recorded. It wasn't the highest wind speeds that's ever been recorded. Even this sort of spatter of events that happened didn't seem like it was the greatest number of tornadoes that was spawned by a single sort of one week kind of dynamic. But it did manage to hit a very densely populated spot. It did manage to hit a couple of schools, and the destruction is huge.
Also, if we look at the past 50 years of what information we have, there's a lot of tornadoes that go undetected. We know that. With Doppler radars in recent years, we're doing a much better job in capturing all those. But the long-term trend is there certainly isn't any indication of a long-term trend in tornadoes.
With things like hurricanes and the big storm systems and what drive them, I think we do learn something additional with every one of these storms. Sandy was really weird. And so what are the conditions that produce a storm like Sandy? I'm sure that was a data goldmine for the climate scientists.
Well, what we're trying to do now is actually go back, and when I say we, I'm talking about the science community, is trying to go back and actually look at severe events. Looking at some of the past heat waves and droughts and floods. We look at the very large heat wave that happened in Europe in 2003, resulted in 20,000 deaths. There seems to be a strong connection. That the likelihood of that type of event has increased greatly because of the fact the background climate has changed. The climate is changing rapidly, and it's largely changing because of human activities.
So the more data we get on these things, certainly the better we're able to refine our models. But I think unlike the tornado science, my not hopelessly ignorant perspective is that, yeah, we can refine our models, but we kind of know the big picture. The question is whether getting more data sort of allows you to tweak the models a little bit and make them a little bit more precise, or whether it actually gives you a new insight into mechanisms that we hadn't understood. I'm not sure where we are in sort of that dynamic.